Good morning. Good morning. Happy Monday and happy St. Patty's Day. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rall. You are tuned into the Ted Manila Information Show, or TMI Show for short, because we do, in fact, bring you too much information. And again, if you're looking for, the straight-laced button-down show, this ain't it. So just a word of warning. F-bombs be flying here. It's like we're in Yemen right now, Ted. F-bombs. We're live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So please be sure to like and follow this show wherever you are consuming this content. You can really help the program if you're not in the financial position to become a paid monthly subscriber. Then simply like it, put the thumbs up on it, and retweet, repost, whatever. Share our content, hijack our content, draw D-pics on us, whatever. Share it. So that way the algorithms recognize who we are. And then you can continue to draw, bad stuff over our images, Ted. I think that's a pretty fair trade-off, even if you hate us, right? So no comment?
No comment.
No comment. Oh, by the way, I've had a few people inquire about the 30-second countdown music. I didn't change that. That was
that's a StreamYard situation.
Yeah. I'm not sure why they did that, because this is like elevator music. It's like very, I don't know. It's very calm.
I liked the other one better.
I like the other one better though. Like, this is fine, I guess, but I don't know why the music just changed, and I don't have the ability to change it back. So that is their hold music.
That's their interface. Yeah. It's just, it's kind of like you can have the 30-second down, and we kind of need the countdown. It is good to have. It's not the music I would have.
No, I agree. Except, you need that countdown.
The other one was very pleasant,
trigger.
Actually, I liked it.
I thought so too, and it was kind of upbeat. This is more like, let's go back to sleep on a Monday.
That's true.
Fine.
And it is a very, I don't know how it is there down there in the DC metro, but here it is like, it's like being in the middle of a fog bank in San Francisco. It is.
Oh, really?
It's soup. It's like here in New York. Yeah.
That was us yesterday, and we were at 70 degrees, but it was like muggy and yucky and gray.
55 here with a high of 58.
Yeah, we're like in the high 50s today, but we've got some sunshine. So maybe you guys have sunshine coming through in a few hours. I don't know.
I don't think that's the forecast. I think I'm looking right now. It's saying cloudy with a little rain in the middle of the day.
Oh, well, all these weird weather patterns, Ted, I'm still in shock that there's been like 40 plus people that have died in various states from the
tornadoes.
Yeah, tornado, like just crazy weather. Tornadoes, I get. Like, you can't. How do you? If you get sucked up in a tornado, it happens. But
that's hard to argue.
But I mean, for others, like, I don't know, if you see that torrential rain is coming and you live near a riverbank, some of those people died in like flooding. So not everybody got sucked up by a tornado. I'm just saying. That's still shocking to me. Anyway, on today's show, we're going to do things a little backwards today. We're waiting on our buddy, on Ted's BFF, on Scott Stantis, to hop on here any second.
Hey, Robbie, please text Scott and tell him we need him now.
He's ready anytime. So we're going to do things a little backwards. We're going to talk to Scott Stantis about all these crazy deportation stories.
I can tee it up while we're waiting for Scott, because he knows all.
Yeah, so we're going to do that, and then we'll do the hot topics on the back half after Scott, because Scott has to go. But we're going to talk about all that stuff, because there really has been a lot of crazy deportations this past week, and over the weekend. So I think that's...
Or perhaps more accurately, attempted deportations in some cases.
And some attempted. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but, broadly deportation issues, which we know how Robbie feels about some of these deportations.
We do know how he knows.
But, in other cases, I'm just... It's not a good feeling, Ted, especially... Well, no, your mom was an immigrant, and my parents were immigrants, and... Mm-hmm. And it just, if you think back, that
my mom came the old-fashioned way. She married an American.
Yes, how all female immigrants from other countries,
Going back to 1620, when the early pilgrims came here and married Native American women so that they could, wait, that's not how that happened.
Wait, the other way. Yeah, no. The U.S. happened on them. The U.S. literally fell out of the sky onto them.
That's true. Yeah. And it was heavy and it crushed them. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. So yeah, we're gonna have Scott Stantis here any second. So Ted, if you want to go ahead and just kind of tee up the issue at hand, hopefully Scott tunes in.
And we're gonna do and we'll do the other headlines after this. But look, the main story of the weekend here, Manila, is obviously what's been going on with the Trump administration's approach to deportations, which it's not exactly what we expected, right? I think we expected there to be an attempt to go after law-breaking migrants who were caught up in the detention system, who had been convicted of crimes, would then be like scooped out of American prisons and jails and then dumped on planes. That was going to be the first approach. Then they were going to scoop up people off the street. Turns out that the administration is also in a big way targeting people for expressing their First Amendment rights, particularly at Columbia University, which is just a stone's throw from where I'm speaking to you today. 3 Columbia University students so far, Mahmoud Khalil, who we've talked about extensively here on the show, and he's, of course, that Syrian national, he's Palestinian. He was a student leader in the campus protests a year ago at Columbia. He was, I would say, abducted would be the best way to say it, by people who claim to have been ICE agents. I don't know that there's any evidence that they really were ICE agents, except for the fact that they turned up in custody. And I'm not trying to play it too cute. There's a video that's on the New York Times website and other places, taken by his wife of the abduction. And what happened was these guys, they're not wearing any uniforms whatsoever. They're wearing street clothes. They're just big, mooky dudes. They don't present any ID whatsoever. They don't even offer a business card, as police officers do sometimes, or FBI agents. They offer a business card. They just say, "You're coming with us." They have an unmarked car, and basically they handcuff this guy. And I mean, honestly, I got to tell you, Manila, if someone comes up to me and claims to be like, I'm from DEA or whatever, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and they don't prove it to me, they don't show me who the hell they are, I'm not going with them. And, I said this online and someone said, well, then they'll kill you. I'm like, they're going to do what they got to do. If they have to kill me, they have to kill me. I'm not going, not peaceably. I mean, I'm going to assume I get death threats. I'm a left-wing cartoonist. I get death threats all the time. I'm going to assume these are right-wing murderers and rapists and kidnappers, and I'm going to act accordingly because they're not. I live in New York City. There's a lot of crime here. There's kidnapping happens. I'm not going with anybody who doesn't. And there's a law in New York. New York's Governor Cuomo signed the Right to Know Act. I think it's in 2018. You do not have to go anywhere with a cop or someone who claims to be a cop who does not ID himself or herself. You don't. So like this, Mahmoud Khalil did not know his rights. I don't blame him because he's not an American. But you should know your rights. And no one should go with these people unless they identify themselves. Then in which case I would go peaceably. But, you can't just like not go with random people. I mean, that's the behavior of like a, third world dictatorship. Anyway, rant over. Ranjani Srinivasan, also basically the New York Times described her hightailing it to the Canadian border with ICE. She was also a Columbia student. She had ICE hot on her trail, and she basically got out into Canada just like with hours to spare before ICE caught up with her, another Columbia student. Then there's Leqaa Kordia, also deported or faced visa revocation, all for participating in pro-Palestinian protests. Ranjani Srinivasan, by the way, never participated in any of the protests at Columbia. She was accidentally scooped up. She was trying to get to class, and the cops came in and kettled several hundred people, none of whom were even participating in the protest. The charges were all dropped by the DA here in New York because it was recognized that they were not even participating. They were just on the sidewalk. They were just students. She's not even a pro-Palestinian person at all. She was just an accident, and she's had to flee for her life. Now, there's also some late-breaking news. A professor from Brown University, Rasha Alawieh, who committed the crime of committing medicine. She had a valid H-1B visa. She was on her way from, she's Lebanese, which is, by the way, Lebanon's not on that target list of countries. She was flying into Boston Logan Airport. She was detained immediately upon arrival and then deported. The administration's offering no explanation there whatsoever. There's no politics involved. And just happening today, Jasmine.
Ted, you would think the fact that Dr. Alawieh is an H-1B visa holder, you would think that Elon would be supportive of that.
True. And apparently apparently there is a tremendous shortage in the area of medicine that she specializes in here in the United States. Her services are needed. So that's a problem.
See, I could dig into you and Robbie on the whole H-1B visa thing via Dr. Rasha Alawieh's story here, because don't we have enough kidney doctors, talented kidney doctors here in America, Ted?
Well, apparently we don't, according to that's. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on this.
I don't know either. I'm just giving you guys some crap about it. But yeah, that's just wild to me on so many levels that this poor Lebanese woman, like, what? Like, she's a doctor. Like, what's happening?
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. And then and there's more. There was this British cartoonist who has vanished at the Canadian border. She was scooped up by ICE.
What?
She was trying to leave New York and get into Quebec province. She was scooped. There was some kind of irregularity with her Canadian visa. The Canucks kicked her out. The U.S. She was here legally in the U.S. on a tourist visa. She's now disappeared into the ICE detention system. She's apparently being held in Tacoma. Her very worried family in England it's just all they do is they just want her home. They're like, please deport her and send her home. Okay. And then there's also this German woman who was a German guy, and his American girlfriend, U.S. citizen, born here, white chick, arrested at the Tijuana border crossing. She was chained. Apparently, both of them were somewhat brutalized.
We discussed that on Friday, right?
We did. And now the latest is Jasmine Mooney, who's a Canadian business owner. She's been detained by ICE while also trying to cross that same Tijuana to San Diego border crossing in order to try to get a visa. She says that she was shackled for over 24 hours, given terrible food, abused, and she asked if she could just go back to Mexico in order to sort things out there. They said no. She said she was put in a cell without any blanket, pillow. She had aluminum foil wrapped over her body. She said like a dead body for 2.5 days. She said that in the middle of the night, she was rounded up with 30 other women to get transferred to a facility in Arizona. We were wrapped up in chains for 24 hours. And apparently this was a private for-profit ICE prison run by a company called Core Civic. And Core Civic issued a statement saying menus are reviewed and approved on a regular basis by a registered dietitian to ensure appropriate nutrition is provided to those entrusted in our care. I'm going to say I'm going to believe her more than I'm going to believe them based on what we know about these systems. So anyway, and then apparently inside the system, all the ICE guards were saying, "You're Canadian. Why are you here?" So she said she found the conditions absolutely appalling. She said she had never in her life seen anything so inhumane. And she's not really clear why they bugged her and why they nailed her. So this is obviously happening. It's sweeping. It's
way
now
more often than it should.
It's one, yeah, and I mean it's sweeping up people, and then of course, obviously, very notably, and I think this might be the real headline here. Over 200 alleged members of that Venezuelan gang, what is it called, Tren de Agua? They were, and this is alleged, nothing's been proven. They've been deported to El Salvador's mega prison, which is basically this also kind of like horrific facility in the middle of nowhere. A federal judge said, don't do it. Don't deport them. If you've already deported them, if the flight's in midair, turn that plane around. And if the flight has landed, bring them back to the United States. That's what the judge said.
Well, so here's the thing, though. When that happened,
basically the Trump administration said, fuck off. We're going to do what we want. And even little Marco Rubio was like saying that like he's not going to listen. That right there is a constitutional crisis. We've been wanting to know what a constitutional crisis looks like, and
they're saying there's a loophole here. The Trump administration. They're saying that the airplanes carrying these criminals were already outside of U.S. airspace by the time the judge.
That's not a loophole.
Headed down the
because that plane was under. Who's on the plane, right? There were U.S. federal officers. They were in U.S. custody. They remained in U.S. custody. It's not like as soon as these Venezuelans left American airspace that they were turned over to their Salvadorian counterparts, right? Then that loophole might apply. I guarantee you that was not true, right? What they did,
like if there had been an exchange, let's say, like meet me at Gitmo and then I'll transfer them to you, and then
maybe. But that's not what happened, right? I mean, I guarantee you that the ICE officers, the BCE people, they landed in El Salvador. And then by this point, they already were in receipt. We know they were in receipt of the judge's order, federal judge's order. And they said, basically, that's not what we're going to ignore this. They said, we're going to ignore this. And I mean, so, what is a constitutional crisis? A constitutional crisis is when there's a breakdown of the system where, all the norms that are ordered by the Constitution start to break down, right? Well, one of the norms. And so when the judiciary orders the executive branch to do something or not do something, if the latter decides not to do that, you have a constitutional crisis at hand. Certainly they've happened before, and this is one clearly now. And so Scott Stantis, thank you for joining us. Scott Stantis is an acclaimed editorial cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune, known for his conservative-leaning cartoons, syndicated to over 400 papers, contributor to Center Clip, and also the co-host of the DMZ America podcast and the creator of the comic strip Prickly City. So many accolades. Scott, thanks for joining us. And I know Scott and I have been talking all weekend about this. No, it's all right. You came on at the last minute. We had a cancellation, so thank you for filling in. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've done lots of talking. Everybody's heard my voice. Scott, you know the stories here. In case you're just joining us, but a Canadian woman just revealed that she had been basically abused and brutalized by ICE. Her name is Jasmine Mooney. She crossed from Tijuana to San Diego, and basically she was detained in chains for 24 hours and detained overall for 2.5 days. She wanted to go back to Mexico to sort things out, and they refused to let her go. She said it was inhumane and brutal in a for-profit ICE gulag. So, not
to mention your colleague, the British lady cartoonist. That's like seeing a white rhino, right? Like a lady cartoonist.
She's not that ugly.
Well, who's also under 60. Yeah, it's rare.
Wow. Yeah, and that she got detained or punted back and forth between the Canadians and Americans, and this is crazy what's happening at the borders. I mean, it's one thing if we're talking about like these guys, right? That's not who we're talking about, though. We're talking about like people that have traditionally, or at least these particular people that we're talking about, guys, are men and women that are either from Europe who don't even need to apply for a visa to come to the US, or people that have like H-1B visas or the right to actually be here that are getting caught up in the system because they traveled overseas or they opened their mouths. And I don't know, what they have to say is disliked by the Trump administration.
Yeah. No, well, they made their list. I'm not sure how many of you followed the list that the Trump administration released over the weekend about countries and how it's going to be like no travel from places like Cuba, Afghanistan, but also considerable restrictions on other countries. And then the third one, which was, we're not gonna make it easy for you, is the name of that particular document. And it's pretty much, what would you say, Ted? 85% of African countries are on that list for reasons. It's like, why? What did Togo do to anybody? But
my personal favorite is Bhutan.
Why? They have a great flag, by the way.
They're all like, they're just Buddhists. I mean, hanging out in the mountains. I don't understand. I mean, they don't even want to interact with us, right? Like, we don't have formal diplomatic relations with Bhutan.
Is that true?
Because Bhutan has an isolationist. It's not that they're pissed off at us. It's literally just because they're like, we want to be alone.
They have the good taste not to want to have anything to do with us
or anyone else. They're kind of like, leave us alone. They don't want to become Nepal, where it's overrun by tourists. So
listen, the story that's not getting covered as well now, it's starting to get some legs later. Just before I came on, I was looking at the news, and that is the underlying story here. And Ted and I have said this on our podcast. I've said it with you guys, and I've said it to whoever will listen, which is nobody. When this administration starts saying we will not, or flat out refuses to adhere to court orders, that's when we've crossed the Rubicon. That's when we've entered waters that this country's never been to. I mean, even Nixon, who is reviled as this horrible, jaundiced, corrupt, the very epitome of corruption, when push came to shove, when the Supreme Court ruled, unanimously, by the way, that he had to release the tapes that he knew were incriminating as hell. Once that order was handed down by the courts, he knew the jig was up, and he agreed to release the tapes. He had to. This administration doesn't have those kinds of compunctions. Now, you mentioned what's happening in El Salvador. I mean, Trump and Trump's fellow travelers all have very deep and profound interests in for-profit prisons. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's start. That's where all things with Trump start. Does he or his family or his minions make money off of this? And they're going to make gobs of it. That's why, you saw what happened to those stocks of companies that have privatized jails when he mentioned about, the concentration camps for the immigrants, right? I mean, they're the ones who are going to run this. They're the ones who are going to make massive amounts of money off of this. You don't see Elon Musk cutting any of that money, by the way. But getting back to my initial point, when you talk about constitutional crisis, that's precisely what this is. It is the very definition. It is one branch of the government flat out refusing to adhere to standards, to normal standards of jurisprudence and of checks and balances. And they're simply not going to follow this. And that is a constitutional crisis. And you have a left that doesn't exist, which is, I know it sounds weird coming from, this guy who's been a Republican his entire life, but I like the balance. I like the checks. I like the balances. And the fact that there is no check here, that, when Schumer is fighting because he had the temerity to vote for, a bill to keep from the government from shutting down, and he's getting a rash of crap from his left for this.
AOC blasted him over it.
Yes, that's the hill she's going to die on. Really, that's what she's upset about. I mean, really, that. I mean, good Lord.
That's pretty funny.
So Ted and I have talked. We have many members of our fraternity, as you mentioned. There is still a fraternity, such as it is, Manila, of cartoonists. And, many of the cartoonists have said, we're under siege, we're under attack. And Ted and I go, no, we're really not. No one cares about editorial cartooning anymore. No one pays attention. Donald Trump has never mentioned it. and his band of fellow travelers never really bothered it. I mean, they do comments and all that stuff, but I would say that's hogwash. We're fine. And Ted and I over the weekend look at what's going on, look at the trends, and we're saying we ain't fine. You guys aren't fine. Manila, Ted, you're not fine. I'm not fine. We are on a list somewhere for criticizing, for not adhering lockstep to the MAGA nation marching orders, whatever they may be, for the day. I think
I'm on two lists. I'm on the Biden list and the Trump list. So
but the good thing about the Biden list is they just keep forgetting that they have a list. This is, and I'm not a fan of, Ted will tell you, I don't like drama. I'm not a big fan of hyperbole. But I don't know that it is drama. I don't know that it's hyperbole to say our civil liberties are in severe danger. I mean, how many stories are you seeing now? And let's be clear, the mainstream media is blowing them up. So you're going to hear almost every one of them. But of some MAGA moron who voted for this guy, and then the story today that's running around Facebook is his wife just got picked up by ICE. She's fully documented alien, but you're hearing story after story of, I didn't know he was going to do that. It's like, well, he said he was going to. None of this is a surprise. None of this should surprise anybody. And for these, there was a solution. It wasn't a great one in Kamala Harris. And 10 million Democrats decide not to vote. Well, we got this now, folks. And this is dangerous. I'm now willing to predict publicly, and I'll see you guys in the camps, that within the next 5 to 6 months, this country will look nothing like the country we grew up in. The democracy will be diminished. You'll still have all the institutions in place. They just won't work. Where's habeas corpus? I mean, that's always the first thing to get flushed down the crapper. And where is it with these people that you just talked about, the immigrants who are scooped up? The ICE agents breaking down a door, not identifying themselves. I mean, it's just story after story, and you're going to hear more and more of them. And Americans, shockingly, are going to yawn. And the rabid left may or may not have a virtual meetup to talk about this.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, Scott, right? Let's just game it out, right? Let's say that you get a big left-wing protest, like Solidarity Day, which was against, the Reagan's assault on the unions in the early 80s. 500,000 people protested on the Washington Mall. Once.
Yeah.
Never again. Big protest. Obviously, unionism was not rescued. So unionism continued to fall apart. Reagan got his way. I mean, the whole difference is that in the Vietnam era, the protests against the war were sustained. They were ubiquitous. Yeah. Every little town had its 6 hippies in the middle of the street, in the middle of the snow, complaining. And in big cities, I mean, if you go look on Wikipedia, there's lists of significant protests during the Vietnam era. That list just goes on and on and on and on. And back then, a protest with 10,000 people was common, no big deal, happened all the time.
Oh, it's all the time.
Now you never get one. 10,000 people, never. A big protest is 1,000 people in New York City, a city of 8 million people. So, I mean, that's the point, is that there's no sustained movement. I mean, you might get a spasm of annoyance, but there's no real organization that can carry this through, assuming that they wanted to.
Complacency of Americans, right? And the keyboard warriors that are all out there with their hashtags, and they're saying, I'm doing something, I'm helping.
In defense of those people, right? I mean, the left for year after year after year has been marginalized, insulted, infiltrated, treated like shit, propagandized, out of existence over, literally the last time there was a really vigorous left of center, presidential candidate, they threw him in prison Okay, and he ran from behind bars. Eugene Debs in 1920. I mean, so, and it's been like, so the point is,
I
it's
love
like
me some Eugene Debs.
the thing is, all that repression and suppression has had an effect, and here we are.
It's all chilling, right? And that's the point. Hold on, producer Robbie wants to jump in there 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, let's add producer Robbie.
Hey, Robbie.
Howdy,
Robbie.
from y'all's favorite MAGA moron, because
Hey, Robbie, I see you're wearing jumpsuit orange.
I am, and no, it says Denver Broncos, as close as I can get, but no, hey, we'll take it. No, I just have just a quick question for the two of y'all. First, I want to agree with y'all that what Trump is doing, especially people who are here legally, is repugnant. I'm right there with you, 100%. There's no daylight between us. What my question is for y'all is regarding the courts. Andrew Jackson said, the court, I want to say it's Andrew Jackson, said, you made your ruling, now enforce it. Mm-hmm. Abraham Lincoln threatened to put the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in prison for going out and get
Tanner. He deserved to be, but go on.
But that's the point, though. I mean, what is Trump doing that's so different? Because this country, like it or not, has a strong executive, at least in my opinion, since the war between the states. I mean, federalism is dead. I mean, where am I going wrong on this? I mean,
well, the habeas corpus and states' rights, the 10th Amendment, I think specifically, are kind of two separate things. And the fact is, the executives and people like you and people like me who think the states should have more authority over the executive functions of their state. That's the courts are the ones who are going to rule that that's in fact what the 10th Amendment says, implies, means. It's the president this president, and there have been presidents. You mentioned Abraham Lincoln, waived habeas corpus, and the Tanner court said, you can't do that. And he said,
he deported congressmen and had newspapers shut down. So let's not pretend like this is new. This has happened several times in American history.
Right. But listen to your voice and listen to how you're saying this. It has also been mentioned in history as something that was egregious and wrong. The was 90? Is it Executive Order 9066 that's began the internment camps for the Japanese Americans?
Right.
The
Korematsu decision.
We look back on that. Yeah, the Supreme Court ruled saying, that's cool.
And that's still case law. Yeah, the Bush administration relied on Korematsu for Guantanamo.
But we look at that and we say, yes, that was wrong. We look at what Lincoln did with habeas corpus. That was wrong. We look at other instances, Sedition Act, which was knocked down.
Well, even this this new old law that the Trump administration dragged out from the sofa cushions, right? The Enemies Whatever Act of 1798.
Yeah. Alien Enemies Act.
Yeah, I mean, again, most historians have felt that law was wrong.
This is the part to me that does not make any sense, and I'm just assuming that, Ted, you're right. The Democrats could have forced concessions last week with the budget bill. Mm-hmm. They could have said, if you want to keep the government open, then you will do these things, and they could have put amendments on there. They didn't, and so what that tells me is that they simply do not care. It's all for show. Everyone's on the same team, and it's all marching towards authoritarianism. That's what I'm getting from this.
Yeah, Robbie, to your point, I mean, how for 40 years they could have codified Roe v. Wade. A simple, and it would, especially with the majorities the Democratic Party enjoyed during that period, they could have passed. It would have been an easy work of 10 minutes in both houses. Just boom, boom, president signs. Okay, it's codified. It's no longer. But they were afraid that they would be branded as baby killers and all, and so it's
they are
fear.
Anyway.
Well, they are.
No, but they don't like being called it. It's come on.
Well, I mean, so what? So killing babies in America is okay, but bombing, killing babies in Gaza and apartment buildings, that's not that bad. I mean, pick a side. Either you're pro-life or you're not.
Oh, I agree.
Oh,
that's why I oppose the death penalty as well.
Childish consistency and your childish integrity.
So getting back to where we are as a nation, first of all, answering Robbie's question, which we've been tap dancing around, I think it's important that there is serving as a check and a balance to legislative and executive power is the judiciary. You're suggesting that ignoring or dismissing judicial decisions is part of that checks and balance. I think the buck has to stop somewhere, Robbie, and the buck stops in our system with the courts as it goes higher and higher up. And as those, there are, enforcement mechanisms lower down. You go to court. I challenge you to go to traffic court and say, tell the judge to go to hell, and you don't recognize his laws.
Well,
see what happens to you.
I mean, I live in Montana, but we have more sovereign citizens than any other state. I know what will happen, right? So I understand. So I hear what it is that you're saying. That's my default position is go to hell. But I'm not the president. The president heads the executive, which is the enforcement arm. I mean, to me, and again, the three of y'all are much smarter than I am. I'm just some dumb hick out in the middle of nowhere watching it snow right now. So here's the way that I look at this. The enforcement mechanism is that the Supreme Court says, okay, you cannot do this. The president tells the Supreme Court to go to hell, like Abraham Lincoln did. Well, then at that point, Congress can then impeach the bastard for something else or cut off his funding. You have to impeach him. Just shut him down. Just say, you don't get another dime. Kill his agenda in the crib. That's the enforcement mechanism.
Like in theory, I get what Scott is saying. Like, for example, these guys that were deported out of the U.S. that we're looking at right here.
By the way, it's appalling the way these videos, if you're not watching them,
this is official. Absolutely
appalling the way that they
treat these guys. These are official video. So like I can show you here, Nayib Bukele, the re-elected, he's in his second term, Nayib Bukele, the Salvadorian president. He says, today, the first 238 members of the Venezuelan criminal organization Tren de Aragua arrived in our country. They were immediately transferred to CDOT, the Terrorism Confinement Center, for a period of 1 year. And he says, renewable. The United States will pay a very low fee for them, but a high one for us. Over time, these actions, combined with the production already being generated by more than 40,000 inmates engaged in various workshops and labor under the Zero Idleness program, will make our prison system self-sustainable. As of today, it costs $200 million per year. On this occasion, the U.S. has also sent us 23 MS-13 members wanted by Salvadorian justice, including 2 ringleaders. One of them is a member of the criminal organization's highest structure. This will help us finalize intelligence gathering and go after the last remnants of MS-13, including its former and new members, money, weapons, drugs, hideouts, collaborators, and sponsors. As always, we continue advancing in the fight against organized crime, but this time we are also helping our allies, making our prison system self-sustainable and obtaining vital intelligence to make our country an even safer place, all in a single action. May God bless El Salvador, and may God bless the United States. And he put out...
But the point is, but I mean, I gotta say, this should be illegal. Video. This should be illegal. Okay, so let's just say, for the sake of argument, we're deporting Venezuelans. It should be illegal. The United States government should not be allowed to basically farm out or outsource their imprisonment to a third country. It's like these are Venezuelan nationals. They should either be in the United States facing charges for the crimes they committed here, or they should be in Venezuela dealing with their own people. We shouldn't be able to just send them to, I don't know, Iran or whatever. It makes no sense at all.
Gitmo.
I mean, this is obviously the Salvadorian government. The Salvadorian government is saying this is a for-profit thing for us. Yeah. And we should not have anything to do with that.
I agree. No, I couldn't agree more. And plus, the president of El Salvador is saying these are criminals. Who says?
There's no evidence at all.
I mean, they could be. They probably are. Some of them may be. Imagine some of them are like, I just came to the United States to wash dishes and maybe send some money back to my family.
I'm sure that's true for some of them. Yeah,
of course.
I'm sure, but that is a crime, though, right? I mean, breaking into a country in which you are not welcome is a crime. I'm not going to shed tears about deporting someone who should not be here. Well, that being said,
if you want to do that, and I don't have a problem with it because that's the law, but do it in a humane way and do it legally. Agree.
Yeah.
And these images are not humane the way that they're treated.
These images are designed to show Donald Trump.
It's government terrorism.
100%.
It's a way to show Donald Trump, to get him all excited and look, we're being tough. They're very, very tough down there. They're very, very mean. I mean, he loves true. This plays into that mindset. And I mean, to your point, yeah, listen, you can't be a sovereign nation without a sovereign border. No one here, I believe, is saying, no. I used to be for open borders more than I used to be, more than I am now.
I mean, open borders are just not consistent with a nation-state system. If we want to, there's a strong argument for abolishing it, but that's the order that we currently have.
So no one is saying that, Robbie, and I don't think anyone is, but you got to do it in a way that's legal. And also, we have a constitution. Once you step on American soil, the Constitution applies to you as well. That's speech, due process.
Well, that's not true anymore.
Right.
I mean, we are deporting people who are here illegally, who are guests of the nation, for criticizing a foreign nation. That, in my opinion, this coming from a Christian. I mean, Israel controls the United States. I probably just got us blew up on YouTube right now because it's freaking true. I mean, if you can come here and if you can say, screw Donald Trump, burn the American flag, that's protected speech. But if you criticize Israel, your green card gets revoked and you get deported. Sorry, the Constitution is dead. Let's stop pretending like it's not.
And that's
that's pathetic.
And I think the thing is, what's really interesting to me is that the government didn't try to gin up any charges against people like Mahmoud Khalil. They could have found out, like, I don't know, we didn't file taxes last year, or we didn't declare. They could have he jaywalked. You know how that can happen. It's like, and all sorts. I mean, they could have come up with something, right? But they didn't. They didn't bother. I don't think they wanted to. I think that this is intentional. It's like they literally said, "This is about what he said. This is about," and they're using this very disturbing statute about providing material support to Hamas, and which is very, very vague. Now, to me, material support would mean like you're sending weapons or money, but the law has been interpreted. There are literally people who have been prosecuted under this statute, American citizens, who provided water, for example, to a person who was a member of a State Department designated terrorist organization. Hey, have a bottle of water. That's material support.
Chris Hedges has told me on my old show in person, has told me on the air about a case that he had covered. I forget who, but a person that was here in the U.S. legally was providing, quote, material support to terrorists because he had sent like socks and other things to somebody that was on trial, like awaiting trial for terrorism. Sent just so they had stuff while they were awaiting trial in prison. And then that person got scooped up for providing material aid to a wanted terrorist.
Scott, very quickly, last question. I know you have to go. Sorry, Manila.
Yeah, sorry.
But what is you said that America's going to look very different. Give me like 2-3 bullet points of how it's going to look different in 6 months.
Due process
dystopian future.
Yes. Well, I, for one, hail our AI overlords.
That's right.
You're going to have a presidency, an imperial presidency, the likes of which we've never seen. The power centralized on the executive branch exclusively. Congress is going to become even more inept and
less of a factor
and impotent, and you're going to see civil liberties just become unimportant. And the idea of jurist review of stare decisis, this case a precedent going up, that's going to be gone. Your rights, as if you are seen as an enemy of the state, you will be prosecuted, and
that
there's not a hell of a lot to protect.
Yay or nay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, so thank you very much for that extremely
Thanks for jumping
bleak
in
assessment. Scott Stantis is an acclaimed editorial cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune since 2009, known for his conservative-leaning cartoons, syndicated to over 400 newspapers. He created Prickly City. He's a contributor to Centerclip, and he's also a co-host of the DMZ America podcast with me, Ted Rall. We just posted our most recent one on Saturday. Go check that out. We talked about this too.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Scott.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right. Well, we should probably get to the headlines.
we already knew exactly where Robbie stood on this, so it's no surprise. But just to tie this up with a bow, so I don't know about you guys. I don't know what it was like in Florida and the Panhandle, Robbie, when you were growing up. But I could tell you, growing up in where the border of where I'm from in Whittier borders East LA, and I could tell you, having grown up around like the height of the gangbanger era rather in the 90s, that it is fucking terrifying when you're in an area that was, you see a bunch of guys that look like this on screen. I'm going to pop them back on with shaved heads because they're gangbangers, right? And there are shootings all the time.
Alleged.
And no, I know them. So I know that I'm speaking from 100% evidential. Like, I know, because I grew up with them and I knew these guys, and some of them I tutored so they can get through fucking high school. Because I hoped some of these people would change, but this is what a lot of these people look like. The guys I'm talking about are born and raised in California, but there are other, I understood the Latin gang structure, and there was an influx in the 90s of these Salvadorians and Mexican gangs don't get along. So let me establish that. There was an influx of that happening, and so I got an inside peek into that world and what it looked like, and it's fucking brutal. And out here in Virginia, MS-13 and these other Latin American gangs are a serious problem in Virginia. There are heads being chopped off, girls being raped and just thrown on the side of the road. This is a real problem in Northern Virginia. And we have a Soros-backed and funded DA in this area that is letting these people out on no cash bail. And just, it's a huge problem in Virginia. You can look it up. I'm not going to take up the rest of the time talking about them, but I'll just tell you, it is a big problem here in Northern Virginia, as well as it was in Los Angeles, in East LA in the 90s. I'm seeing that problem, but more disgusting out here, because back then it was drive-by shootings. At least, like, that makes the drive-by shootings of the 90s seem ethical and pale in comparison to the shit that's happening out here in Northern Virginia, where literally people are being slaughtered on the street, chopped up, arms and limbs, like disgusting crimes that are happening, committed by gang members.
There's no love lost between me and the people that you're describing. Treat them like dogs, because that's what they are. I'm telling you, this is how I see it.
How about convicting them in a court of law first? How about that?
How about this? How about you start trying to come across the border by tunneling under? You mind the bastard and let them send themselves to Jesus. You don't get to come here illegally, and you don't get to go around and kill people.
That's right. And these guys come here, and the problem is the DA in Northern Virginia has found ways to, like, let them out, or the backlog of court cases is so long that they never get to these guys. And, you know, the laws prohibit holding them indefinitely until they get to the case. So these guys often get out and then commit other crimes, and they get picked up again. And it's this horrible cycle, and nothing gets solved. And I know that a lot of people in parts of Northern Virginia, this is the DMV metro, like, it's a stone's throw to the White House. This is one of the biggest complaints of Northern Virginians. And they won't say it. If they say it in hush hush tone, because this is a blue county. Fairfax County is ardently blue. And they're like, BLM, yay, Black Lives Matter, you know, like immigration, yay. But then they're like, oh, but the gangs. And they say it in hush hush tones. Well, but I know a lot of the moms are
maybe they should grow a spine, Manila, and take my page. Go ahead, whatever slur it is they're going to call you. I've been being called a racist and white supremacist for 8 years. I will be your white supremacist. I will be your Nazi. I will be your Putin bot. I will, whatever the hell is that you want to call me. I will be that. I will be your boogeyman. But you know what? You're going to freaking listen to me, and you're going to deal with me. Grow a fucking spine. Stand up. I mean, it's not that hard. It's
Northern
not that
Virginia.
Hard.
So not much a whole lot of spining happening here.
Well, guess what? Are they able to walk on two legs? Are they bipedal? If they are, they have a spine. They can start using it.
Yeah, that's the problem. So I don't want to spend the rest of the time talking about these guys, but this, you know, should should I cry over these guys getting deported? No. I mean,
no, I don't.
not really,
look, that's not the issue. The issue here is, look, you always, whenever you have a violation of civil rights and civil liberties, you always start with the scumbags, right? That's why when the government looks to censor people, they go after like a scumbag, self-described scumbag like Larry Flint, the publisher of Hustler magazine, which even by porn standards was considered especially scurrilous at the time. You go after a guy like that first. You're not going after, people who are popular. You're not going after Angelina Jolie. You're not going after Taylor Swift. You start with the low-hanging fruit. You start with the people who no one gives a shit about. And so whenever I find myself thinking, I don't care about this person or this group of people, a little alarm goes off on my shoulder and says, Ted, that's exactly what the government wants you to think. And I think it's a trap. Like, you got to look at these guys. It's not about them. It's about this is a test run. This is literally let's see what we can get away with. So first we're going to start with the real scumbags. Then we're going to start with the people who are scummy, but not quite as scummy.
Scummy.
And we're going to work our way up the social ladder till we eventually are able to get,
get protesters.
Yeah, protesters. But then we're going to go beyond. Anybody who, we don't care if you're white and you're a U.S. citizen and some people in the media. Ultimately, we'd like to get to you, but we can't start with you because too much hell would be raised. As it is, the reason we're talking about Mahmoud Khalil is because they fucked up. They didn't know he had a green card that gives him a lot more protection than if he was here on a student visa. They thought he had a student visa. The video shows him being, as he's being detained, they're on the phone with someone, and ICE HQ says, they tell ICE HQ, he has a green card, and they're like, bring him in anyway. In other words, they were so stupid they didn't know that. So that's why this turned out to be a little bit of a problem for the Trump administration.
But it didn't, though. It's
a little
not.
bit.
It's
not. It's
not.
a little bit.
I distree, and the reason why I
disagree,
disagree,
there's a federal judge who's on top of this.
I completely agree. But again, though, what can the judge do?
Well, the judge can say, you got to put up or shut up. You got to prove that he did something wrong.
Then Trump could just tell him to go to hell. And you know what? The Democrats,
and that's your constitutional crisis right there.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is that the Democrats just this last week, to your point, what's left? Where is the left?
Right.
It doesn't exist anymore. The Democrats just rubber stamped Trump's policy. They go out.
No, I agree with you. Robbie, I'm going to write. Look, I'm writing a column this week for I don't know for whom, but I'm going to try it at the Journal first, and if not, I'll syndicate it. But here's my theory. It's this wouldn't fly in most other countries. If this happened in Bangladesh, cities would burn. Okay, so this wouldn't fly in France. This would not fly anywhere.
Mahmoud Khalil with these head-shaved guys that are over in CDOT.
So my point is that Mahmoud
the head-shaved guys are a distraction. See, that's the thing. So there's two parts.
They validate the whole thing. But wait, let me just finish my point. Okay. So the fourth, I know I interrupted you, but let me finish my interruption.
You're the host. I'm the producer. You have the right.
So all I'm saying is I don't know. It might not be profound. I felt like it might be, but I hadn't had a coffee when I came up with the idea. And my idea is this: the fourth branch of government in the United States, the fourth check and balance, is we the people. And so in other words, if cities were burning, if there were millions of people surrounding the White House demanding that Trump step down, if it was Tahrir Square or you name the equivalent, that's the check on the problem, Robbie, that you're pointing out. That when the executive branch ignores the judiciary, that's the check. That's the check we're missing. We the people we have our thumbs up our assholes. We're outsourcing our politics every 2 to 4 years. We show up to vote, some of us, and then that's it. We figure okay, we've put those assholes in charge, and they're going to do what they want. Then we go back to our 3 jobs to try to try to pay our rent. That's the problem. That's ultimately the issue. The fourth branch of government, we the people, is not working in this country.
Robbie, My problem is that we are still paying for these guys that we're looking at. We're paying the Salvadorian government to hold them. That's my only problem.
They should be sent back to Venezuela. Really,
100%. I mean, the way that you solve this is if you're dealing with the country and they will not take back their citizens.
They will. The Venezuelans said they would take them.
Then why the hell? See, this is the part for me that doesn't make any sense. Because why would you just send them back to Venezuela? Well, I know why. It's because they're making money off of shipping them over to El Salvador. So I can't say I don't understand it. To your point about the people not having power, the fourth branch of government used to actually be the states themselves. The 17th Amendment ended that. The 17th Amendment killed federalism, and that is a direct throwback to the war between the states. It used to be that the state senators were appointed by the state legislatures. They were never supposed to be elected by popular vote. That's how the Constitution was set up originally. The states themselves were the fourth rail. That's gone. The reason why you're not having the labor protests that you're talking about before, and you touched on it, is because people are too distracted just trying to survive. You can't run a country as a democracy if you're trying to figure out how the hell you're going to put food on the table and pay the bills. It doesn't work. This is all by design. And so what we are watching late stage, and I made this point before, we are where we are now in American politics is where the Romans were at the times of the triumvirate. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same playbook. There's nothing new here. Scott's right. Civil liberties in this country is going to end. American republicanism is over. It's dead. We're just living under the illusion of it. This is all by design.
Well, we're like running super late here.
Yeah,
obviously,
we'll make that the last word on that. So,
all right.
All right. Thank you, Robbie.
Hey, a smart person needs. Y'all needs to have the last word. Y'all are smarter than me.
Now we're going to quick run of the headlines.
Yeah, we're very, very quick here. I'm not sure we're going to get to all. I think we should skip headline numero 4 because I feel like it's redundant to what we just talked about. But all right, you can look at that and think. All right. Anyway, the U.S. has launched widespread strikes on the Houthis in Yemen. That happened over the weekend, killing 53 people and injuring 98. Mostly women and children, of course, because we're the U.S., as it supposedly targeted military sites and a power station in the southwestern part of the country. The attacks were the biggest U.S. military operation since Trump got back into office. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi urged the U.S. to, Iran is an ally of the Houthis, urged the U.S. to stop it and cut it out. General Hossein Salami denied that Iran was involved in the Houthi offensives. The U.S. has been part of a Saudi-led coalition that has fought the Houthis in a proxy war in Yemen since 2014. But tensions have been especially frayed ever since the Yemenite rebel group began ambushing Israeli and Israeli-related ships that passed through the Strait of Hormuz in the Red Sea after the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel, and that disrupted some global trade. Things have been relatively calm since the ceasefire deal was struck in January between Israel and Hamas. But the Houthis said that they were going to get back to it in very, very soon, going after shipping in the Red Sea. So Trump's decided, no, don't. And that's it.
They're going to Trump says they will escalate whatever's happening right now with the Houthis. And the Houthis are like, bring it, bro. We're not going to back down. And this is
the
all
Houthis give no shits.
They give no fucks at all. Like even if Iran hadn't been arming them at all, they would still be fighting with sticks and stones. Like that's just who these people are.
Yeah, they're like the Afghans. They do not care.
If nothing else about these Yemeni fighters, they are principled. If nothing else,
it's true. And badasses.
Yeah, they are badass fighters. They are principled as hell. So even if they didn't have modern arms from, supposedly supplied all by Iran, we don't know.
Probably, yeah.
But even if they didn't have them, like I said, they would fight with sticks and stones because they are that principled. And this is all over what Israel is doing in Gaza. So I don't think the Trump administration Ted, we know that the Trump administration is opening this can of worms because they want an in to go fight Iran. That's the whole thing. That's the whole beef.
Indeed. All right, so let's keep going here. Trump and Putin will discuss a 30-day ceasefire proposal between Ukraine and Russia this week, and there's a call has been scheduled. Putin, however, did issue a bunch of conditions. Trump said that he's going to talk tomorrow to Putin and that they're going to figure out something about dividing up certain assets. I don't know what that means. To allay
like in a divorce?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Like,
How does that work?
Is Putin getting the Tesla? What's going on?
Who gets the dog?
Yeah, no, I get the dog. To allay fears that a pause will give Ukraine a chance to rearm, Putin is demanding that Ukraine stop all military mobilization, that the Western countries stop sending more weapons. The Russians also want to formally annex Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye, which I think they already have. So I don't know why they're saying this. I think it's more like they want Ukraine to acknowledge it.
Right.
And then Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the UK announced that a small coalition of nations will support Ukraine in their negotiations with Russia.
Joke.
I don't know what that means. So they're going to retweet them or something.
Right.
Offering air and peacekeeping support, which the Russians have adamantly said, no, you cannot, as well as seizing frozen Russian assets to keep up the pressure on Moscow. Russians are like, we're going to do that anyway, whatever.
Right, whatever, okay.
Thieves. Anyway, Trump narrowed the role of General Keith Kellogg, who is kind of a pro-Ukraine guy, from special envoy to dealing not just with Russia and Ukraine. Now he's only going to deal with Ukraine. Russia claimed accurately that Kellogg was too close to Ukraine. Businessman and U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, who has previously said that Russia was provoked into attacking Ukraine, which is, of course, true, is now considered the key player here. So after a drone assault last weekend, Russian forces are now pretty much mopping up the Ukrainian forces who invaded the Kursk region of southwestern Russia. The Ukrainians are saying that they're going to fight to the bitter end. And basically the U.S. is asking the Russians not to enable that and to allow them to surrender. But of course, the Russians have said, hey, if they surrender, we'll let them live. But if you don't surrender, you're going to all be killed. And that's just how it goes. I mean, this all makes sense to me.
That's war. I mean, these are all very predictable things that we've been saying for months, Ted. At least you and I have, and of course our friend Mark Sloboda. Very predictable as to what the Russian demands were going to be. I'm surprised that these talks are happening as soon as they have, but I still don't think that peace will come for many months. I hope I'm wrong, but I think
2 weeks.
I don't think so. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think it's months from now before they declare that the special military operation is
that I'm sure. But in terms of the fighting coming to an end, that's going to be in 2 weeks. There's going to be, or sooner. There's just going to be a ceasefire, and the ceasefire is just going to lead to an unwinding of the war.
I feel like the diplomatic relations, the door has been opened, and that's good. And the talking will start, and maybe some of the violence will trim.
Started. Talking is underway.
It'll trim the violence. I think trim, but I don't think it's going to end it for months. So I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't foresee that happening because I feel like the Ukrainians are just not gonna formally accept that all these regions will officially belong to Russia on paper. Like, here's the deed, Vladimir Putin. I feel like they're not going to accept that.
I think, and if I were, frankly, okay, so, in this whole thing, I'm more sympathetic to Russia than Ukraine. I'm sympathetic to the people of Ukraine. I'm not sympathetic to their government, which sucks. But I will say that I would advise the Ukrainians, probably the smart move here is don't ever formally recognize. You can probably keep that. You can probably say we will tacitly acknowledge, but we will never formally sign off on the loss of our territory. It'll be kind of like it's an autonomous, as far as we're concerned, it's an autonomous zone. It's a frozen conflict like North and South Korea.
But I think that's precisely why the Russians won't accept that. I think they
think
want
the Russians can give that
I think
away.
they want it.
They want it. Everyone wants something, but it's something that Russia can give away, because I would tell Russia, this is about, if I were mediating between them, I'd say, come on, you guys can let that go. It's about the facts on the ground. That's what you guys care about. And what you really care about is that they don't ever join NATO. That's what you really care about. So, you'll get that. And that's what this was always about, first and foremost.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
and for the Ukrainians, this is all a good deal. I mean, mark my words, in 10 years after this war is over, if we're still alive, let me just say, Ukraine is going to be booming. Okay, they're going to be doing so well because they will have joined the EU, and they're going to become a EU country that borders Russia along a major trade route. They're going to have they're going to be able to charge transit fees on trade with Europe, energy pipelines. They're going to be economically tied in between Russia. They're going to be the link between. They're going to be like Turkey. They're going to be like Istanbul. They're going to be the link between Europe and Russia. And that's going to be a massive economic boon for them. And they're not going to have to deal with these restive ethnic Russians in these areas that hate
East.
They hate the Ukrainians, and they don't want to be in Ukraine anyway. It's kind of like you're getting rid. It's kind of like when someone forces you to divorce your mean wife. They're doing you a favor. It's like that. Like, Russia's doing the Ukrainian. They don't see it. They're doing them a favor. They're like, we're going to take these assholes off your hands.
Little bit of correction. I would say the people in the East and the Donbass, they don't hate the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians hate them. The Western Ukrainians hate them, and we're fucking shelling them for the last 10 years.
Right.
So those people are just like, dude, I'm just here.
But the point is, they're not going to ever get along. They're never going to get along. So it's So it's outside force basically saying, we're going to fix this problem for you. They shouldn't join NATO because NATO's dangerous for Ukraine. So
NATO's dangerous for the world.
But I'm talking, if you only talk, NATO should be abolished. It's very dangerous for the world. But I'm just saying, if you're looking at, if I'm talking to the Ukrainians, I'd be like, you guys should be so happy. You should totally go do this. Yeah.
I don't know where all the salesmen are that Trump, in Trump's world, who know, it certainly ain't the military guys. I don't think they're the best salesmen to sell this. I don't think Keith Kellogg is great at selling.
Yeah, and I don't think Marco Rubio is very good either.
No.
He's not much of a diplomat.
You need one of these swarthy New York real estate guys.
I would really be good at this. I'm very good at mediating conflicts between people.
So am I. Yeah. You actually need.
It's an INT. You need an INTJ for this.
Well, there you go. Yeah, you need
someone who's not emotional, who can put themselves in someone.
Keith Kellogg, we know where his leanings are. I was surprised when he was assigned this special emissary role. What Trump really actually needs here is one of his New York real estate douchebags, or one of these hedge fund guys that would be great in negotiating. You know what I mean? They're excellent hagglers. That's what they do for a living, right? That's what you need here between the two sides, not some 3 or 4 star general, full bird fucking colonel or whatever. That guy's going to go in there stone faced and just push out demands. You need somebody to talk to Ukraine that's going to sell them on the idea of why this will be better for them to just stop now, instead of being like, oh yeah, and we're going to bring in Keir fucking Starmer. Get the fuck out of here, Keir. And then Keir Starmer's little ass is going to go in there and say, we're behind you and we will send all of our troops, our 255 troops. No, that's shut up, Keir Starmer. Shut up. Just shut up. You're making everything worse. Somebody shut up Keir Starmer and just deal with Ukraine directly. Somebody shut off the Europeans for now, because they should put up or shut up. Either you're going to bring Ukraine into the EU or you shut up. Just shut up.
A key aide to Biden may have exceeded. This is a story you're not going to hear in most mainstream media outlets. It's kind of like the Hunter Biden laptop. You got to kind of hear this from conservative media. Not that I'm conservative, but anyway, a key aide to Biden might have exceeded their authority by liberally using an auto pen to sign official documents, according to two former sources in the way. Yeah, what? Yeah, an auto pen is
We're looking at it right there.
Like if you ever sent a letter to a congressperson and then they send back they send back a letter with a hand signature, it probably was signed with an auto pen.
It looks like a hand signature. It looks like hand signature, but this is the actual machine.
Very old technology. It goes back at least to the 70s.
Look at this. It is an old machine. Look at it. I mean, I don't know why
it's a contraption. Anyway, so so Trump's aides set up more restrictive rules about the use of the auto pen. A document obtained by the New York Post outlines a narrow set of circumstances in which Trump's signatures can be signed. However, it turns out that an analysis of Biden's signatures on various records, including pardons for the J6 committee, apparently were done by auto pen, or more like probably were. So a small group of officials under both Biden and Trump have been delegated the power to get documents, quote unquote, signed robotically. But Biden's perceived cognitive decline perceived by humans
are we past that?
Has sparked debate, not yet, not until Jake's book comes out in May, sparked debate about whether some aides might have assumed his wishes as he finished up his term. One aide for Biden told the New York Post they think that a key aide to Biden might have made some unilateral determinations on what to auto-sign. That person's being kept anonymous by the New York Post. The aide, who didn't respond to requests for comment, would frequently make mention of what the boss wanted, the source said, but colleagues had no idea if it was true because the internal culture in the Biden White House wasn't to ask any questions.
Because he was a dick.
I feared no one as much as I feared that person. To me, that person was basically the president, the source said. No one ever questioned him/her, period. All right, I gotta ask you, Manila, who do you think that was?
I was all morning. I've been trying to scramble. So it's been established that Joe Biden, long before he lost all his marbles, publicly was, when he was VP, was publicly beloved and whatever. And he was, Scranton Joe or whatever. But for many years, it's been well established that Joe Biden behind closed doors was an asshole to work for. Right.
Yes, that's right.
So it comes as no surprise to me that the staffer was saying that they were afraid to ever speak up. That does not surprise me at all. But now I'm scrambling to think, who is Joe's right-hand man or woman?
Well, I know who it was, I think.
You think a staffer, though?
I think it's the chief of staff, Jeff Zients, or before that, Ron Klain.
I could see Ron Klain, but I don't. Jeff Zients, really?
Well, I mean, those were the chiefs of staff, right?
Ron
Klain was chief of staff until 23, and then well, they said staffer, right? They didn't say individual figure,
right?
So
because I would have thought Jill was puppeteering.
Jill's not a staffer,
but I think Jill could have still been puppeteering in lieu of her husband.
I mean, there's other options, right? There's Steve Ricchetti. There's Jen Dillon. I don't know, but I don't think it's them. I think it's got to be. I'm going to say it's probably got to be the chief of staff. The chief of staff is always the heavy. It's always the person who, that's their job, right? I mean,
to crack the whip. That's
I mean, think about like Ron Emanuel, right? Was an insane, mean chief of staff, right? A chief of staff is meant to be a shitheel. So, so that, like, who's the biggest shitheel? It's gotta be those guys.
Listen, we got to listen to what Trump says about this. Just real quick. It's like a 20-second soundbite that I want us to play for a second here. Here's what he says about it, which draws a lot of other questions because he wants to revoke Biden's executive orders because he says if he can prove whatever was signed by auto pen, then it's not really an executive order, meaning the J6 committee no longer gets their cozy, comfy, right? Their little cozy, comfy what do we call it? a pre-pardon because none of them, they didn't, supposedly, they never went through the judicial system. So it's a pre-pardon. So here's what he says.
The man was grossly in
Pardon.
All you have to do is take a look at he signs by auto pen. Who is signing all this stuff by auto pen? Who would think you signed important documents by auto pen? You know, these are major documents you're signing. You're proud to sign them. You have your signature on something. In 300 years, they say, oh, look, can you imagine? Everything was signed by auto pen, almost everything.
So that would be like new precedent if he did somehow overturn all of these executive orders, because if everything was signed by AutoPen the last several months of the administration, then September 13th, Ted, when you and I effectively lost our jobs, then that doesn't count either, because those sanctions against Russian media would technically not count.
Oh, that's hilarious. But you'd have to go to court and prove it. And prove that.
I don't know.
But I mean, here's the question, right? Is it legal? I mean, like think about
Trump is saying he's going to overturn them.
Think about you can sign legal documents by DocuSign. You can sell a house through DocuSign.
Yeah, but it's me signing it. It's not an agent.
How does anyone know? We don't know that. It's just it's not.
That's the thing.
It's someone with access to your computer who signs it.
So, is there any difference in when you're an elected official, like a president, from you and I signing stuff via DocuSign?
I think they're honestly, I'm not sure DocuSign really should be valid, but I do. I mean, I got to say, I agree with Trump about this issue. The presidents of the United States, or any high-ranking official like a Supreme Court justice, to me, it's not not valid if it's not a real signature. You know, yeah. I mean, then there's no evidence that the person, you know, I mean, like a lot of like that's why we even have notaries, right? Not only is it a signature, but there's a witness who attests to the fact that the person that signature belongs to the person that it's claimed to belong to. You know, I just feel like it's squishy. I mean, you shouldn't be using an auto pen to sign an official presidential document. I agree.
Well, I mean, I agree too. Wouldn't the 25th Amendment, I mean, I feel like there's something being tied in there of whether or not Joe Biden's mental capacity to rule, as it were, in the last few months. Because as we saw, I mean, he checked out easily in 2023, like fully checked out. His mental capacity easily by June of 2023.
2019.
Easily.
All right, whatever.
Well, you know, I'll give him some generosity here and say by the time we saw him on stage with Trump in June of 23, right? Is that right? Yeah. He was gone. He was long gone. So everything that happened thereafter, if I'm going to pick an arbitrary date, I'm going to say, okay, when he presented to us on the CNN debate that he had mentally checked out, from henceforth, everything he did is invalid. Every executive order, every whatever bill he signed is null and void, because can we prorate the 25th Amendment on him and say everything is null and void? I don't know.
Well, it would be not pro rata. It would be retroactively declaring, these particular documents to be null and void. You'd have to go through a complicated court process and basically allege fraud. You'd say this document it's invalid because the person who, I think basically what it would boil down to is,
couldn't it be invalid if he was mentally incompetent to actually execute these documents and execute on these whatever it was his auto signature was on, and it was Ron Klain at the time, or it was whoever, Jeff Zients or whatever at the time.
Well, I hate to say it, the signature is not the issue then. The signature is, it brings our attention to it. Legally, however, even if Joe Biden personally signed the document, if he was mentally unfit, right, just like then the document would, you could challenge it, right? I mean, it's like there's no, like let's say you get into a business contract with an 85-year-old person who's mentally okay, here, I'll give you a good example. Your mom rewrites her will and decides to disinherit you. She's 85 years old. She's now dating like a 30-year-old hot dude, and then he becomes like the new heir. You go to court, and you're like, mom's not like, the elevator's not going all the way up to the top floor. Mom didn't know what she was doing, so I want to throw that will out. This happens every single day.
Oh,
so
sure.
It would be like that. I don't think the auto pen would be evidence that that the signature, that the mental state wasn't there. I think then there's the question of, like, let's say, did he even know? I think you'd have to get an attestation, assuming that he was deemed mentally fit. You'd have to get an attestation from the former president saying, yeah, I was well aware of this and I was okay with it getting signed. I don't even know if that makes it valid, but I think at that point, probably your case goes away. Not that it should, but it probably would.
That would be, I mean, there's some weird shit happening all over every corner of the Trump administration, Ted. So this is one of the things that I'm actually,
it's kind of fascinated
by, like in a good way, because I personally do not believe Joe Biden was, had
he wasn't really the president. Okay.
He wasn't playing with a full deck. Let's just say.
No, not at all.
So I would like to see, because in the future, I would like to see the precedent set for this, Ted. Because in the future, if we have a president, young or old, if you lose your marbles while you're in office, I would like to see the precedent set that you can get booted out. Everything that you say or do is null and void, and we need to remove you. I would like to set that.
I mean, it's interesting
and then we can apply it to Congress with all the dinosaurs in there.
As you know, I'm a student of Vichy France, the Nazi, and between 1940, between July of 1940 and August of 1944, the government of France legally was the Vichy regime, right? Nazi puppet regime. And when Charles de Gaulle, who was the first president of post-war France in 1944, came into power, might have been his very first act, but one of his earliest acts as president was to sign a declaration that every law passed and regulation passed between 1940 and 1944 was invalid. It was like wiping the slate clean. Like, this regime didn't even exist. It's gone. Right. Poof. Like, French school children do not learn about any of the politicians who were in charge during that period. They're not listed as, like, it's just like a blank space, right? Now, really, they did have to. There were some practical problems with that, which is the Vichy regime did pass some regulations and some laws about things that were not bad, that were things that they needed, like to regulate like a toll bridge or whatever, or a tax on, avocados or something. So they had to go back and individually say, okay, this one law from 1942, this one goes back into place. But they basically started from scratch. Like, we don't know. And
I would like to see that happen here.
I do think that probably there's a valid case to be. I mean, can you imagine the mess it would create, though? Because everything's built on top of each other. Right. So, like, including stuff that Trump's doing now, a lot of it is sort of like an amendment to stuff that Biden did. So it's like Jenga. It's like Jenga. You pull it out,
it is like
the
Jenga.
Whole thing comes falling down. Yeah.
I was gonna say it was like the stacked cemeteries in the Philippines, because there's no more like room. So it's like body on top of body. Like, after a while, they have to just exhume, if grandpa's been dead 60 years, it's time for somebody else to take that spot, like on top of,
Oh yeah, that's what they do in Taiwan, right? In Taiwan, you rent the space. You're only in, oh my God, you're buried for a year. And then after a year, they dig you up. You have a second funeral, a second memorial, and then they incinerate you.
Why not just cut out the middle, man? I plan on being incinerated. So I've taken enough space.
Not me.
Whenever I go.
I insist on having my own pyramid. And
really?
Everyone, I don't know if you know this, but everyone, including you who knew me, is all going to be buried alive in my pyramid.
Oh, like a pharaoh.
Clovis. Yeah. Everyone. Yeah. Everyone's going to die. Robbie. Everybody's going to. Yeah.
Okay.
I just figure it's the least narcissistic way to memorialize myself.
Well, speaking of the narcissism,
Everyone's going to have
one
their
more
brains.
thing.
I want to have my brains carefully extracted through my nose. Yeah.
Look. The last thing I'll say on this matter, I'm not even going to say, I'm going to show. This was Trump's truth or tweet or whatever. It's a troll. He's trolling Biden one more time. It's 2017, his presidential picture there. Mm-hmm. Biden's presidential picture is replaced by the auto pen. And then Trump's newest official portrait as 2025.
Trump's newest official portrait looks so much like his mugshot.
It's his mugshot.
From the Fulton County, Georgia thing.
Indistinguishable. I think that's on purpose, but I think that is ultimate troll right there, that he replaced Biden's portrait with the auto pen. That, say what you want about Trump, but he is a master troll.
Yes, that's true. I assume that's just photoshopped, right?
I mean, it's a meme. Somebody memed it, so it's, I don't know, but Trump tweeted or truthed it or whatever. So, okay, one last story, a fun science story.
By the way, did you know that Fani Willis is still the DA of Fulton County, Georgia?
I thought they were getting her out.
No, she's still there.
After banging the dude and giving him contracts or whatever.
Yeah.
Really? I thought she was getting replaced.
Yeah, well, I thought so too, but...
Well, boy, did that girl of the hour get knocked down to nobody, from hero to zero real quick.
Yeah, I mean, look, she's lucky to be working, though. I mean, honestly.
Jeez.
And finally, last but not least, a new highly efficient process for performing this conversion. What conversion? Oh, my God, I deleted something that I wish I hadn't deleted. Okay.
Oh, wait.
All right. Well,
for
anyway.
The story?
Yeah, I was trying to make things shorter. Oh, this is very embarrassing.
Oh, then you can just reverse it. Hit the reverse button.
Oh, yeah, I could do that. Okay.
Hit reverse again.
I'm doing it. Oh, my God, that's so dumb. Here we go. Okay, MIT engineers are turning skin cells directly into neurons for cell therapy. Converting one type of cell to another, for example, a skin cell to a neuron, can be done through a process that requires the skin cell to be induced into a pluripotent, there's a word that I hope I never hear again, stem cell, then differentiated into a neuron. I have no idea what any of that means. MIT researchers have now devised a simplified process that bypasses the stem cell stage, which converts a skin cell directly into a neuron. Okay, that part I understand. Working with cells from a mouse, the researchers developed a conversion method that's very efficient and can produce more than 10 neurons from a single skin cell. If replicated in humans, this could enable the generation of large quantities of motor neurons, which could possibly be used to treat patients who have spinal cord injuries or any other diseases that impair your mobility. We were able to get to yields where we could ask questions about whether these cells can be viable candidates for the cell replacement therapies, which we hope they could be. That's where these types of reprogramming technologies can take us. That, according to Katie Galloway, the WM Keck Career Development Professor in Biomedical Engineering and Chemical Engineering. As a first step toward using these as a therapy, researchers showed that they could generate motor neurons and engraft them into mouse brains, where they then integrated with the host tissue. 20 years ago, Japanese scientists showed that by delivering 4 transcription factors to skin cells, they could coax them to become induced pluripotent stem cells, otherwise known as iPSC. Similar to embryonic stem cells, iPSCs can be differentiated into other cell types. The technique works well, but it takes a few weeks, and many of the cells don't end up fully transitioning to mature cell types. Using the mouse cells, the researchers started with the original 6 transcription factors. They experimented with dropping them out one at a time until they reached a combination of 3 that could successfully complete the conversion to neurons. After a couple of weeks, the researchers found that many of the neurons survived, seemed to be connecting well with other brain cells. In a dish, the cells showed measurable electrical activity and calcium signaling. This suggests that they have an ability to communicate with other neurons, which is, of course, what neurons need to be able to do. The researchers now hope to explore the possibility of implanting these neurons into your spinal cord, maybe not your spinal cord personally, but someone's spinal cord. The MIT team hopes to increase the efficiency of the process, which could allow for the generation of a lot of neurons that could then be used for these spinal cord injuries. like ALS, for example. Clinical trials using neurons derived from iPSCs to treat ALS are already underway, but expanding the number of cells available for these treatments could make it a lot easier to test and develop them for more widespread use in humans. So
Ted,
I only understand about half of that, but it's pretty interesting.
I know that Joe Biden doesn't have a spinal cord injury, but no. I feel like we could tie this story with the last story. Probably. In that they can use his brain to like implant some of these skin cell neurons and see if it works in a human. Like if he can start saying coherent sentences, then perhaps he can run in 2028.
I hope so. I really hope for nothing more.
That would be amazing.
Assuming there's an election in 2028, which I'm becoming increasingly skeptical of.
I don't know. I just thought that was a really cool story. I have a family member, who is who's a quadriplegic from an accident when he was 18 years old, and that would be amazing to have some, to see people like that, like my family member, be able to stand and walk again from skin cells, like this stuff, like I'm scratching my face and now it's like there's skin cells in my fingernails. That can all be dedicated to science now, Ted. I just flick out wow. It's cool. Just wild stuff. It is wild stuff.
Cool.
And I love science stories. So I was the one that chose that and put that in there because that's as close to like being a doctor as I was ever going to get. Mom, sorry. So that was it.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
I don't regret not having become a doctor, but
I don't regret it.
Pays better than this anyway.
Yes, that's the one thing. I don't regret not being a doctor, but being a doctor is much more stable than being a journalist. So
true.
So
all right,
here's the rub.
All
right, guys. That does it for us. We'll be back tomorrow, maybe with our normal format. I don't know. The world is constantly shifting, and we're just trying to keep up with it. So please join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Manila Chan. That's Ted Rall. We Audi 5000. All the Gen Xers know what that means.
Indeed. See you tomorrow.
Adios, amigos. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.